Welcome back to another edition of This Old Truck, where we work on the 620 project. As you can see, we have a body on that, and that was something that showed up on the last episode that we were doing. So now what we're going to do today is further that progress. Since we last talked to you, we have welded in the front bed mounts that were missing. So if you go back to that video, you'll see that there were bed mounts that needed to be put in. Those are now in the truck. And now the next step that we are going to engage in is we're going to take this engine, this dead engine that you watched us try and start, and we're going to go ahead and put that in the truck so that we have some weight. So we're going to go ahead and put the engine in here to load the suspension. The reason we're going to do that is so that we can get the wheel to align out the way it's supposed to. If you look at it, it's got some negative camber to it. We're going to hang a fender on this, and we're going to establish how much back spacing the customer is going to need on their wheels when they get into this. The other benefit to taking this measurement is that now we also can figure out the width that the rear end needs to be to have the same amount of spacing to the fender well. The customer would like to have even back spacing on the wheels from front to back, and in order to get there, we're going to need to determine which rear end housing we need to use in order to get the correct width. We happen to have all three of the housings that are the right size, so we're going to go ahead and go through and get this measurement done, and we're going to walk you through those steps as we do it. So there we go. So now we have an engine back in there. We have an engine in there. It's just sitting in there. It's weight. We're letting gravity do its thing. So the engine is now in there. Now we can address getting the fender on and putting some weight on that tire so that we can get well, not putting weight on the tire. Now we can get the fender on there, then we'll dismount take the rim off, and then we're going to measure the face of the rim to the fender lip. Try and get some measurements off of that so that we can figure this out. Alright, so now we have a fender on the truck, and it's roughly the same lineup. The reason this is a critical issue on this particular build is that the lip comes down the side of the fender and then it dents in. And so the back spacing on the wheel is going to be a very critical measurement for us. We're going to need to know. We're going to need to know. So now we're going to take the tire off. We're going to jack it up, take the tire off, and support the weight of the vehicle at the end of the control arm with the jack. So we still have the suspension laden while at the same time able to make some measurements. Okay, so right here what we've got is we've got something set against the face of the wheel hub and square to the floor. Got this piece of metal we know is square. And we're measuring from that straight line to the lip of the fender. And we're getting 2 13/16 of an inch. Alright, so now we're in the back of the truck, and we've got this square to the face, square to the floor. I'm going to take a measurement. What are we at?
We're on 3 inches on the top.
So we're at 3 inches in the back. So we are pretty close. The adjustment, the difference we have between the front and the back is
less than a quarter.
Yeah, less than a quarter, which we can vary the width of the axle only about in 1 inch increments. So ultimately We're right in, and then we're also off. There's no drum on there.
Oh, that's true.
So you figure the rear and the front are equivalent.
Yeah.
So it means that we don't need to change this axle housing. This is the right axle housing for the truck to get the same spacing to the fender well.
Yeah.
It's great. All right, so to show what we just did, this drawing, which doesn't make a lot of sense, this is a cutaway of a wheel. Think about this. That's the top of the wheel. That's the bottom of the wheel. Come on, I'm not a great artist. That's tire tread. And then this right here is your hub surface, your hub right here, the wheel studs hanging off of it, your axle shaft. And then the wheel has this hub surface that bolts to the axle shaft. What we're measuring is the relationship of this hub to the fender. So there's your fender. And so what we're doing is we need to know the difference between this distance and here. So that's where we're trying to establish the distance between, now you can order wheels where the center hub, so that when you order wheels, you're dealing with what they call a wheel offset. So now a positive offset means that the hub surface moves to the outside of the wheel. So this center piece moves outward. More positive offset sinks the tire further in. And then more negative offset pushes the tire out. So a zero offset wheel, the width of the wheel, divide by 2, basically the hub is at the dead center of that wheel, okay? So a zero offset wheel is dead centered. If we wanted negative offset, we would take the wheel and move it out on the hub. If we wanted positive offset, we would take the wheel and pull it in on the hub, or push the hub out, if you get what I mean. But the point is the relationship out on the hub, in on the wheel is positive. Out on the wheel, in on the hub is positive. I get it right? I got it right, right?
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay, so anyway, what we're doing is we're measuring the center. We're measuring we're measuring the distance between the edge of the fender and the hub center line. And so what we know is we're going to agree that that's probably 2 3/4 of an inch. In all practicality, the distance 2 3/4 of an inch is a safe distance. So now, let's say that we're using a 15x8 wheel, common wheel, right? For it to fit within this fender, what we need to do is we need to see first we take that 8-inch width divided by 2, that's 4 inches. And then we're going to take that 4 inches and we're going to subtract the distance that we have here. So 2.75, and that gives us 1.25 inches that this hub needs to move outward, or rather the wheel itself needs to move inward on the hub. Now that wheel offset is generally in millimeters, so what we know is that with an 8-inch wide wheel, we need 31 millimeter offset in order for this wheel to fit within the fender. Does that make sense, Darren?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I mean, he's lowering the truck, so that makes sense. He wants to tuck the wheels. Is that the majority, like the point of this?
Yeah, so the idea is tucking the wheels.
Okay.
So anyway, that's how we go through the math. That's why we did this. Okay, so here's what we're talking about. So the nice thing about all of this is now we know the wheel offset that we're probably going to need to run, or we're going to be able to calculate the wheel offset depending on the wheels that get bought. This is one of the most difficult parts of building a car, and some people just don't really wrap their heads around how that's supposed to be done. Something to take into consideration, a positive wheel offset stuffs a lot more tire into the wheel well. Now, that's not such a big deal, except the wider you go, the more likely it is that that wheel is going to make contact with steering and suspension components in the wheel well. Now, and a benefit is that you reduce what's called the wheel scrub, because the wheel moves through a tighter arc, if you would, a lot closer in line with the movement of the hub. Now on the other side, on the vehicle, you're going to find that the wheel, if you have a negative offset where you're pushing the tire out of the wheel well, you're going to push the wheel well out or the tire out on the hub, you're going to need a lot more of an arc for that wheel to move through, because it is that much further from the center line of where it's rotating. So you figure where your ball joints are and everything, the tire's out from that and even further. And so you've got a lot more of a radius that you need to rotate through with a positive offset. You're going to find out with a positive offset wheel, it's a lot less stable, and you're going to also find that it's more difficult to turn. And that's just the nature of a wider offset wheel. It also, because of mechanical advantage, it also puts a lot more strain on your steering and suspension components. Just things to take into account. But it also means with a wider offset wheel, because you have to move through so much more space, you're also going to find that you need a lot more wheel opening to run a wider offset wheel. And in this case, if you wanted to really run a real wide offset wheel, because the wheel well is so small, you either cut the wheel well out to fit it, or you're going to have to run a lot smaller tire. And there are pros and cons to that as well. At any rate, in this particular case, we now know what we're going to have to do to calculate the wheel. We know what we're going to have to do in order. We have a measurement we can use to calculate what we're going to do for wheel offset, and now the customer can know that. A customer can start looking at possibility of wheels and tires. I think in this particular case, an 8-inch or a 7-inch wide wheel is probably going to be about as far as we can go, given the space constraints. But we'll see what happens. We'd also like to thank Louis for letting us borrow his junk fender.
Thanks for sponsoring us, Louis. Thanks, man. You're a real good pal.
Yeah, Louis, this was actually the fender off of his junky old truck, but it's obvious for obvious reasons. But this gave us the measurement we needed. So if this information helped you in any way or anything like that, if you felt like this was helpful, or maybe you have questions, drop a comment in the comments below. We'll answer those, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Are we going to answer them?
Yeah, we'll answer them.
Yeah, maybe we answer them. Anyway, if they were useful or helpful or whatnot, please like, subscribe our videos. You know, we're just doing this for fun. Yeah. We make more money actually working, so but anyway, catch us more on as we get moving on this project even further. Just keep with us, and we'll see you on the next episode, which hopefully is going to have us finally getting this thing off to sandblast.